So, point number 5, our final point, we've already discussed the instruments used, listening or reading accounts of the original performer and different versions of the composition. However, the thing we haven't really talked about is information about the premiere itself, and this includes performance conventions of the day. So one thing to bear in mind in particular is that the pitch of A, 440 as we play it nowadays, was actually a lot lower in the past, almost a semitone lower in fact in the day of Bach. So as we heard in the recording that we listened to at the very beginning, one performance was at a higher pitch than the other. This is because one's at Baroque pitch and one's at modern pitch. Secondly, to bear in mind is how much rubato to use. So it was very common in the Romantic period to put a lot of rubato into your playing and your works. Chopin is again kind of the one to look at for this because he would play his own works, as Rachmaninoff and many others did, and he would play it with a lot of rubato. He would bend the tempo of it all of the time. So if you look at a score, if you play it robotically exactly how it is notated, that's not going to be how it was played and it doesn't sound very good. Again, another example to listen to. Let's have a listen to Chopin without rubato, kind of played metrically exact, and one with rubato, how Chopin would have played it. Change how you play it. Should you be playing with rubato, should you not? And then again, harking back to the Bach example we had earlier, don't play Bach with rubato. That doesn't happen, at least not in the Chopin sense. You can sit on notes a little bit, but only really at ends of phrases. Look at the convention. Look, what actually should I be doing? And is this what the composer would have wanted? Is this how it would have been done? Is this how I want to bring it off nowadays, here in 2020? Another thing is ornamentation and improvisation, particularly in early works, but also romantic ones, piano works again in particular. Ornaments would be put on cadences as well, kind of have a trilled cadence, even if it's not written in. Particularly in early music, because printing was so expensive back then, they wouldn't necessarily write out every single ornament. They would maybe put a symbol if they definitely want one there, but if it's, you know, kind of a given, but also not necessarily kind of, yes, but I need to write it there, then it would just be improvised instead, and a lot of ornaments and extra lines and things would be put in, particularly in what we call da capo arias and pieces with a da capo. So that's where you have your first section, your second section, and then you have a little kind of symbol, da capo symbol, and then you go back and you play the first section again. So in the repeat you would ornament it and improvise around kind of the line that you've been given, and this would be written in. This would all be down to the performer. Is this something that you could do in your work, in your performance? Would you be interested in doing that? Is it appropriate? Is this something again to think about? So a really nice example, which kind of ties up everything we've been talking about, I think, with the ornaments and the improvised things, is Allegri's Miserere. So one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written. Allegri's Miserere was kept to only being performed in the Sistine Chapel for centuries. Legend has it this was until Mozart came along, listened to it and thought, wow, this is incredible, and on 2 listens wrote out the entire thing. Bear in mind that it's kind of just the same section repeated about 4 or 5 times with different words. So he effectively listened to this one thing like 10 times, you know, don't give him too much credit. So he wrote out the whole thing and thought it was so nice, and he was kind of so poor from gambling that he went and published the score in Europe, and lo and behold, this kind of sacred work only available to the Sistine Chapel was everywhere. It was all over Europe now. The Pope actually thought this was very clever, Mozart, and Mozart went and thought he was going to be told off, but the Pope just kind of said, fair dues, man, fair dues. So a couple of other people did the same as Mozart later on, namely Mendelssohn and a couple of musicologists. The difficulty is, though, not everyone who went there to try and notate it had perfect pitch, and because every time in the Sistine Chapel, even after Mozart's score was kind of spread, the performers would still improvise around some of the lines, and they would still kind of do their own thing against what was really quite a bare score that Allegri presented them with in the first places. Half of it is chanting, it's not written out rhythmically, and then half of it is notated kind of normally. So more importantly, they would improvise these ornaments and these lines, and each of these ornaments will be different for each singer who sang it. It's not going to mean that every single performer does exactly the same ornament, they're all going to be different. And this is what led to many incorrect transcriptions. They were correct for what that performer did. However, the people transcribing it, Mendelssohn and the other musicologists, they didn't always get it right. So often they would have the wrong starting note, so all the intervals they were writing as they were listening to the performance in the Sistine Chapel were correct, but they got their starting note wrong. And also, I mean, if they looked at the score that Mozart kind of spread, this isn't always the key that they sang it in anyway. They would sometimes move it up or down a tone or a third to kind of suit the singers that they had at that time, because the singers chop and change really quite frequently. As soon as the boys' voices break, they are out. It's like, goodbye children, no more chapel for you. So these transcriptions were either written in the wrong key, or some of it was in the right key and some of it was in the wrong key, and because it all just kind of got a bit mixed up, that means the version we sing today, where they've kind of taken all of the different ones and tried to make it a whole, as in like, yes, this is the piece, is actually wrong. There's a very good video that explains this in much more detail, kind of who exactly did this and why the kind of this incorrect, quite literally incorrect parts in the wrong key thing got circulated. I'll link this in the description below. It's a bit heavy, but it's very interesting. It's only a short little video. So this is less of Allegri's Miserere, what we've been listening to, and more of the people's Miserere, as I call it. So many people have had an input now into this piece. It kind of belongs to everyone. And that top C, the really big moment in the work that is kind of why it's so famous in the first place, wasn't actually there. It was only a G, but because of the wrong transcriptions in wrong keys and stuff like that, it's kind of been shoved now up to a C. However, this isn't the main feature of the work, even though Allegri didn't put it there. But, okay, a final thing to think about, which kind of really rounds off what I would like to think we've been discussing today, is that Allegri's Miserere is stunning because it's timeless, because this kind of really oldie worldy piece, which was already kind of half chant, half modern, so it was already kind of a bit of a hybrid anyway, has been kind of tampered with for centuries and centuries and centuries. So when we listen to it today, it kind of fills the needs that we want today, as well as this very old thing. The composition has transcended time over its approximately 500 years of existence. And that's what really makes it special, and that's why there isn't really another piece quite like it. So authenticity is great. Definitely know how things were done at the time. However, this doesn't mean that you need to recreate that exactly in what we do today. Our instruments are different, our ears are different, goodness, our A's are different. Whilst you may think if Bach heard some of his work today played on a piano instead of a harpsichord, he might go, oh that's really heavy, oh that's really loud, oh I don't like it. Beethoven might listen to some of his works performed today and think, yes, finally the instrument has the scope that I really wanted from the instrument that I was playing at the time, that couldn't play the really, really hard fortissimos and really get the kind of really dramatic changes in emotion that he was writing then. Nowadays we can actually do that even more, and that might be what the composer would want, that might not be what the composer would want, but I mean, a lot of the time they're dead. We don't know. So because of this, I encourage you to be informed about the way you do things, but make your own decisions. Bring the piece off yourself and take bits from everything we've talked about today to inspire you and inform your decisions to make sure that you are playing the piece how you want to. I hope that's been really helpful. I hope there's been something quite different. I know this isn't talked about a lot with younger performers, but I don't think that this means that it should be ignored at all. He certainly doesn't. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great week. See you next time. Goodbye. Can't play bad Bach and not have Bach stare you down. Will he be in your way if he goes in?
No, not at all. This is a modern day piano, darling.